And we are live. How's it going, everybody?
Live action.
Good evening.
Let me go ahead and give a quick shout out to everybody that's done came in. We got Steve Ransom, Chad Thomason, Chris Everett, Finseeker TV, Fields the Water, and Wanna Be Outdoors. Hey, thank y'all all for coming on in. I'm sure we'll have some more come in here in just a moment. Thank y'all for being here. Tonight, we have on the show the star of the show. So let me make him the big show. The star of the show, Dustin from TeamSnagginWhiskers. How's it going, Dustin?
I'm fantastic. How y'all doing?
Doing great.
Yeah, doing
so you
good.
got a busy day today because you're on here with us, and then you get to eat dinner, and then you got to hop up and have y'all show tonight.
Yes, sir.
So, and you said you was telling me you had some other stuff going on too, right?
Yeah. So, I just was telling you it's kind of my long weekend, not my time off weekend, but my time to work weekend for YouTube stuff and fishing stuff. And so I'll do your show tonight. I'll do our show with Sean from 10 to midnight. Then I got to get up tomorrow morning to get ready for help get my son on the bus, and then get to work by 8:30. And then I got to run around after work, and then I have to go. I come home and I eat dinner, and then get online to host Jody's show from 8 to midnight, Pontoon Jody's show. And then I'll be getting up early Saturday morning to try to get on the water. I want to be on the water by like 6 for the Whisker Bowl. And then fishing that. And then my kid's birthday party is in the afternoon. And then Sunday morning is stand day. So probably be on the water around 7:30, 8 o'clock Sunday morning.
So you got a jam-packed schedule.
Yes, sir. Every weekend.
So you mentioned Miss Jody. How did you and Miss Jody become such good friends? Because I know that I see you help host her show all the time. Sometimes she does her show on your channel that, after you got your subs, you was trying to get your hours up that last little bit. So how'd y'all become about being good friends?
Well, I was watching her show for a while, and I really hadn't done any hosting or co-hosting, but I'd seen a lot of people do it. And there was one night, and Stan wasn't able to make it because Stan hosted her show for a good while. And then Daryl filled in when he could. But there was one night that she was doing it on her own, and I put in chat, I said, hey, would you like me to come up and help you out? And actually, the funny thing is, the first time I ever did that, I thought she was ignoring me. Like she didn't say anything. Rhonda, or Fishing for Whiskers in chat, was putting in chat, Dustin saying he'll come up and help. And then so I just sat back and I watched the rest of the show. And then the following week, I reached out to her again during her show because she didn't have anybody to come up. And I came up, and it's ever since then I've been co-hosting her show, and it's been a blast.
Awesome. Yeah, y'all draw a pretty good crowd to that show, and to y'all show that goes on Thursday nights. Y'all found some real success with it, I think.
Well, yes, Jody's show has been stable, and that's I think is what she really has going for her. She's not doing the flathead challenge per se. It's more of a fishing with friends, because flatheads typically don't bite during the wintertime. So she kind of suspended that, but we're doing, fishing with friends. And I love it when she's out there fishing. So when I can come up and read chat for her and talk to her and James when he's out there, and the other folks on panel, it's a lot of fun. And I've got to give her a big portion of the credit, because she really solidified that audience for Thursday night. And when she moved her show from Thursday to Friday, I had already been on her show for, I don't know, 8 months, 6 months, 8 months, something like that. So a lot of people had already seen my face. And when she suggested that we take that time slot, I talked to Sean, and he's like, yeah, absolutely. And I think, like I said, the folks that were already there watching Jody's show, we really appreciate them, sticking around for Thursday night and coming and joining us. And we're having a lot of fun with it.
Well, it's a great show. I know you were telling me y'all had bank versus boat coming up this week's bank. And the last one I caught, you and Stan were talking about tackle and a little bit of everything. So y'all go over pretty much anything to do with fishing on that.
Absolutely. I'll tell you. I mean, this is only our 4th episode. I feel like I've been doing it for a while, but this is only our 4th episode. Hey, there's 2 stands. Yeah, Jody was our first guest, and then 2 stands came on for a 2-part series of Tackle Talk. I mean, as you guys know, it can be. Oh, there's my guinea pig in the background. It can be kind of difficult sometimes to figure out what you're going to talk about on your show. And so one of the things we try to do as much as possible to engage chat is the last 15 minutes is we get chat to suggest what our next show is going to be about. So all we got to do at that point is find the guest.
Yeah, you can definitely get up here and run short on things to say, especially if you do a lot of YouTube. You feel like sometimes you've said the same thing or something, but y'all do a great job of keeping it fresh, keeping it new. So let's take a step back further than that. We know how you started your show now, but how did you start YouTube?
Well, I grew up in Colorado and the Kansas area, and thanks, Jody. So I had always fished, small lakes, rivers, catfish normally is what we caught out there. And then when I moved out here in 2002, I really didn't have anything to do with fishing, to be honest with you. And I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years ago, I, for some reason, decided I wanted to get back into fishing, and I started watching YouTube. I just started searching catfishing. Of course, the first 2 names that I really followed and came up with were Dieter Melhorn and Chunky Cats. And those were those 2 guys I followed religiously. I watched like everything. I still watch almost everything that Dieter puts out. I think Chunky is more transitioned to TikTok, but I still watch almost every time I see a video from Dieter, I go watch it because it's very informative. And so I was telling my wife one night, what would you think about me doing YouTube? I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. I'm nervous because, well, I don't talk that much. I'm just kidding. I didn't know what I would say. I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know anything about YouTube. And so Sean and I worked together, and he actually started his YouTube channel first. Bless you. And Sean had always been a bass angler. And so I got him out on my boat one time and took him and his son catfishing. And they've kind of fell in love with it ever since that. But we together, we had our individual channels. He had TeamSnagginWhiskers, and I had my channel, Catfish Element is what I think I called it. And we actually fished together in Dan, Green Machine Guide Service, Green Machine Outdoors. And we fished in that together. And after that, we're like, why don't we just combine our channels? And so there was the start of TeamSnagginWhiskers. And I think that was October of 21.
Oh, that's cool. So it's just kind of organically evolved all from typing in the search bar on YouTube.
Yes,
catfish.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Cool. That's a pretty cool story right there.
And if anybody in chat has any questions they want to ask Dustin, drop them in there, and we'll be sure to get them asked. Welcome in everybody that's came in since I did shout outs. I seen we had Brian B, Jody, Curtis, Dale Hayslip, Big Wrench, Don R. Not sure who all I'm missing. I'm sure I'm missing some. But
man, Chris Everett.
Yep, welcome. So what fish do you consider a blue cat fisherman, a flathead fisherman, channel cat fisherman, or you're just a cat fisherman? You want to catch a little of them all?
We will not discriminate against catfish. No, I love, so when we go out fishing, we are targeting the big blues. Well, thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. We mainly target the big blues. Now, I will say during Jody's challenge, We try to target flatheads. The problem is the flatheads are not as abundant on the James River, on the lower James where we fish. Now, not to say they're not there. I've caught a 17 pounder and I caught a 20 pounder about 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago on stand day. But that I wasn't targeting it, but it's a catfish, and we love the fact now that we can tell the difference between what we're fighting before we even see it. We pretty much know if it's a channel cat or if it's a blue or if it's a flathead when it hits the rod. So no, we are just catfish anglers. We do not discriminate against any type of catfish.
Yeah, and it's probably pretty much the same for us. We don't go out and target flatheads hardly ever. Once in a very blue moon, we might decide to want to anchor up on some structure, and we'll try to catch one. But we enjoy chasing the blues. There's a better blue cat population in our home lake. It used to not be that way. But now it's a good blue cat population, and they're just fun to fish for. They're aggressive takedown. Who doesn't love seeing that rod just get hammered?
Absolutely.
I get impatient. You get that flathead biting, and he's over just chewing on it, and you see that tip that rod just barely moving. Like 45 seconds into watching him do it, I'm like, I'm gonna go over and jerk up on the rod. I have no patience.
Yeah, the last flathead I caught, a 20 pounder on stand day, I had no idea he was on the hook. So we had anchored. We were on my boat, and we had anchored the boat. The current was running pretty good, and we fan cast the rods in a fairly deep hole. The water temperature was 42 degrees, and we started. Stand 3 was telling me, "Hey, we lost anchor. We're moving. We're drifting away." So I said, "Well, let me reel all the rods in, and then we'll pull anchor and move back up and try to reset it." And I'm on the second rod, and I'm starting to reel. I'm like, this feels weird. And at first, I thought I was on a log because the rod was just bending and nothing was happening. And then I started making some movement on what turned out to be the flathead. And as soon as I got him off the bottom, as soon as he dove back, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a fish. And I reeled him in. That was my PB flathead. It was 20 pounds.
Yeah, it's bigger than my PB flathead. I think the biggest flathead I've ever caught, I think, was 9 pounds. I don't know. I caught it on a live stream. It was small. Just hadn't caught many flatheads ever in my life. Daddy used to fish a lot for flatheads, and he's had some great success catching flatheads, both with rod and reel, and then back when we noodled, also he had some really good success with that. But because of the noodling, there's not as many flatheads in our lake. So
That's exactly right. We learned our lesson the hard way on that one.
yeah,
But I've been fortunate enough that I've caught some real good flatheads on rod and reel. Actually, biggest one being 60 pound, and that was a big flathead.
I can't imagine. That would be awesome to pull in a 60 pounder. That fight would be fantastic.
Yes, it was.
So, how long did it take you to learn to fish a tidal river?
So we're still learning. There's some nuances to a tidal river because, of course, you got the incoming and outgoing tide is two different beasts. You got to know because your ledge is going to be on a different side each time. So if you want to fish a ledge, you got to be on an outgoing tide. Depending on how you want to fish it, if you want to fish down the ledge from the top, you got to be on the backside of the ledge. But if it's an incoming tide, if you want to fish the backside of the ledge, you got to be on the other side. So I mean, there's some nuances to it. We're still learning, but we had a great teacher and mentor in the catfishing community, 2 Stands. He has become an awesome friend of ours. He's taught us a lot. We felt really silly the first time we put our gill net out. Actually, we didn't feel silly the first time we put our gill net out. We felt really silly after we brought Stan on our boat for the first time, and he showed us how it was supposed to be used.
Doing it wrong, huh?
Well, we didn't know anything about a gill net, and Sean had purchased it, and it's got that weighted line on the bottom. It's got the bobbers on the top. So we figured, you drop one end, you stretch it out, you drop the other end, and you should be good to go, right?
Sounds right to me.
Yeah, it did until you look back and everything's kind of in one big jumble. And then when we brought Stan out on the boat the very first time, he's like, "All right, so where's your weights? Where's your weights?" I'm like, "The line is weighted." He goes, "No. What holds it down to the bottom?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Well, let's go get some rocks. And so we got some rocks and we tied that. He goes, "All right, what do you use to float the top of it?" "What do you mean? The bobber's on the top." He said, "You got to keep it stretched out." So, I mean, of course, we could have went and watched some YouTube videos, but we thought it was fairly self-explanatory. You just drop the net, you're good to go. Not so easy.
Yeah, Stan said he told y'all almost got it right. It's missing a few components. So, what's your preferred method of chasing these fish? Is it dragging, drifting, anchoring?
So that's a good question. So we have, because Sean and I are a team, we have two different styled boats. So we primarily go out on his boat. It's a roughneck 1860, I think is what it is. So it's more of a flat bottom, and he's got a trolling motor on it. So we can drift, we can drag with his boat. My boat, not so much. My boat does not have a trolling motor. My boat is a Bayliner Element, and it did not come with anywhere to mount a trolling motor. So if you've watched any of the videos that we've done on the rod rack, my boat is a pleasure boat. So I've had to make it into a catfishing vessel. So there are people who have fabricated mounts for the front of the boat to put a trolling motor on, and at some point I will get there. But to answer your question in a long-winded answer, we like to drift and drag when we're in Sean's boat. Sometimes our preferred method is spot lock or anchor, just because most of the times when we're drifting or dragging, we lose gear, and we don't like that. Now either we lose gear or we lose time, because when you're drifting and you get hung up, the great thing about a trolling motor is you can go back and get it. But you've just lost 20 minutes of fishing. If you only be out there for 3 hours, now you lost 10, 15, 20 minutes trying to go retrieve all your gear, and then you got to get everything set back up, and then you got to cast back out. So we do a lot of spot lock in his boat, and I can only anchor in mine. I've tried drifting. Oh, thanks, Fish. Appreciate that. We've tried drifting in my boat, but it's hard to keep the baits on the bottom, because the contour of the bottom of the river changes so drastically from one point to another. So there's not really any part in the river that the bottom is flat unless you're up on the ledges, or up on the flats. So the river goes, so you're constantly letting line out, reeling line in, letting line out. So drifting is not really a method for me, because again, I can't keep the front of the boat straight. So typically when I try to go out drifting, the wind's blowing. Inevitably, the wind blows, and I spend more time trying to drive my boat straight than paying attention to the rods. So I anchor fish in my boat, and that's primarily how I fish out of that boat. But it's done well for me in the past.
Yeah, I've seen some of the fish y'all caught. It's definitely done well for y'all. You were talking about losing gear and stuff, but you can go back and unhang it most time. Most time if you get on the backside of that, but then, like you said, you lose 20 minutes. Yep. So I think dragging is trolling is a really great technique. But if you're keeping lines out of the water more than you're keeping them in, what are you really gaining? Right. And you can break off, but if you're running boards, you can't, because as soon as you break off, you got to turn around and go get your planer board.
Yep.
So, I mean, you might be willing to lose a peg float and a hook. You don't want to lose a planer board.
Not an Uncle Lou's planer board, no sir.
So, you know, if you're in an area where you're not snagging up, but maybe twice an hour or something, and most of them are pulling loose, the areas we've dragged, we snag up quite a bit, but a lot of them pull loose. So we don't have to reel them up, but maybe twice a day while we're out fishing, which isn't bad. But if you're fishing somewhere like what you're talking about and you're reeling up every 15 minutes, yeah, you're doing more work and not enough fishing.
Yeah, I still remember we were on a live one time up in the city, and Freddie Beck was in our live, and he was chatting about how got Freddie Point when him and Nina came up and fished with two stands fishing. Oh, thank you, Jody. And he was like, "Yeah, I recognize the area. You guys should drag that area." So we dropped our lines out. We put our planer boards out. We started dragging. Within like 3 minutes, we were snagged up. We got everything unsnagged. We moved past that spot. We threw everything out. We set everything up again. Within 4 minutes, we were snagged up again. We said, we're not doing this anymore. We're going to go spot lock somewhere and we'll catch the fish that way.
Yeah. Normally when we get snagged up, when you're trolling down through there, you look over at the graph and you see that mark that's like that long, that tall, and you're like, oh yeah, here in about 150 yards, when those center rods get to him, it's going to be fish on. And then about 5 yards later, it's that rod tip's buried and pulling drag because the boat's still moving in the line.
Yep.
You're hung up and you're like, I be dang. That fish I just seen, I ain't going to get to drag a bait past. And everybody in chat, go ahead, drop in some questions for Dustin. We'd love to hear what y'all want to hear him talk about. Daddy, you got any questions?
No, but I do want to say I'm glad that Dustin knows what to do with a pleasure boat. You turn it into a catfish boat.
Now, so if you look at and that is a very important thing to know about pleasure boats, that you can turn them into catfishing vessels. But I wanted to design, I say design loosely because I'm not an engineer, but my first rod rack I put on the tow bar was just one long piece of wood. It was a 1x4, I think, and I sprayed the Flex Seal stuff on it, and it lasted for probably about a year. And I had four cheap Walmart fishing rod holders on it, so I could put 4 rods on the back there, and it held up for a while. But when I wanted to take it off of the rod rack, I had to take the two end. If I wanted to take it off the tow bar, I had to take the 2 end rod holders off, and then I had to lift it up, and then I had to take it. It took me about 5 to 7 minutes to get that thing off. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to come up with a different idea. So I took it off and I cut it right down the middle, and then I put the 2 like window clasps and a spinning clasp on the bottom of it, to where it was stable enough to still use. And that was good enough again for a while. But then about, 3 months ago, I'm like, I need something more permanent. So I was talking to some friends of mine at work who also fish. And one of them does a lot of fabricating on his boat. And he mentioned something about a steel bar or a steel tube or something. And so I went to Lowe's. And they happen to have those perf tubing, which is a steel bar which is 3 feet long, and they had them at 1.5 inches and 1.25 inches. I'm like, this might be interesting. So I bought the 3, and I took them home, and that 3 foot 1.5 inch perf tubing fit almost perfectly in my rod rack, like right in the middle. And so I took the 1.25 inches and I slide those in with the rod holders on them. So if I want to go back to a pleasure boat, I take those out, the rod holders off, and I put rubber caps on the end of that middle tubing. So it doesn't get in the way. It's always there. And to put everything back on is just to put them in, pop a pin in, and I'm done.
That's pretty cool.
Oh, you're
Cody.
Sorry, I keep muting because I'm kind of under the weather and I'm sneezing and coughing a lot. Sorry, I forgot to click it back on. But we built a couple sets of rod racks for the boats Daddy's had. We had built multi bars by using pretty much the same design as Fishing and Stuff did in their video for the multi bars, and we lost one of those whenever I totaled Daddy's boat. And a cool story is the other day, Daddy seen that bar on Facebook Marketplace for sale.
Oh wow!
Somebody had found it, and he messaged the guy. Was like, "Hey, I'll buy it off of you. My son totaled my boat and lost that out on the lake." And he's like, "Well, where'd he lose it at?" I guess he thought he was just being full of it.
Right.
And he told him where I wrecked it. He said, "Hey, that's exactly where I found it." But, well, yeah, I figured. So Daddy went to buy it off of him, and the guy was just an all-around great guy. He actually wouldn't take Daddy's money.
Wow.
He said, "This is yours. You've done had enough bad luck. Here you go." So that was awesome of him. So we got our set of multi-bars back. But one of the multi-bars we had made a cutting board stand out of, the one we had left. This time we took square tubing and angle iron on the top to make our T for a T-bar, but we wanted to be able to take them off because Daddy's boat and trailer is 10 foot wide.
Wow.
To the outside of the fender wells.
Right.
And his garage door is 10 foot wide. It wants to fit so bad, but it doesn't. And so we have to use a boat cover now. Well, we wanted to be able to take those T-bars off easily if we wanted to. So we just got another piece of square tubing that was just big enough to go around that other. Welded it to a base plate, bolted it down, welded a nut on there, welded a little bar across the end of the nut so it was just like a T-screw. And we just set them in there, tighten that little screw down, and they're on. And when you want to take them off to put the boat cover on, you just twist that little screw off and lay them in the nose of the boat. And It works really well. So we do have some questions come in. Curtis says, "Where does Dustin get his haircut at? I want that glow."
Well, it's in my bathroom. Matter of fact, I just cut it before I came on the show.
He said, "Curtis, you come to Virginia and he'll cut yours too." And Miss Robin C says, "Dustin, do you ever target any other fish to catch?"
Bluegill, perch, bait fish.
Bait.
Yeah, we are. I mean, when I say we, myself, I am mainly a catfish angler. I will fish for bluegill. I will fish for white perch. I have caught a crappie before. I didn't know what it was when I caught it. It was probably about that big. I had it in my boat. It was a good crappie. I had it in my boat. I was actually fishing for bluegill. It was on a really ultralight rod, and I had to text my dad and I texted a couple of friends. What is this? I have no idea what this is. But no, I mainly fish for catfish and bait fish. Now, Sean, if you watch some of our shorts, him and his son do some bass fishing, and they also go out to the beach and they do some shark fishing, some surf fishing for sharks.
We love doing that as well.
I prefer my hands intact. So, I mean, if some people watch the lives that we're on when we're catching some of the bigger fish, I have a towel on my hand when I put it in the fish's mouth, the catfish's mouth, because I've had them roll on me when I have my hand in their mouth and it cuts the skin up. I'm not scared of it. It hurts a little bit, but I prefer to keep my skin intact.
I understand that. Surf fishing, though, I do think's a blast.
Yeah, I love
it. Brad says this here, and this is the exact same way we do it. He says he keeps 3-foot leaders with spooks about 4 inches away from the hooks. And, it's funny you say that because every time we show our leaders on the line alive, everybody says, "Wow, those are really long." And I'm like, well, by the time you pull it, it's nowhere near 3 foot off bottom, and it doesn't hang up as much. So I like how you're tying your leaders, Brad. That's how we do it too.
Yeah,
I think the longer leaders make a difference.
That's one thing I've been thinking about because I have some leaders that are 8 inches long, some leaders that are probably what I usually do is I take the leader line and I have the spool in my hand and I run it from my wrist to my shoulder. And that's roughly about 2 feet. And that's typically how long I run my leaders. But I've been thinking about it. If I run a 3-foot leader, that spook is going to get that bait off the bottom just a little bit higher, and I should have less issues snagging. So I haven't tried it yet, but that's one of the things I'm going to try to do this year, if I can remember.
I would always prefer to have you want the bait obviously dead right in eyesight of it, but I would prefer for the bait to be above the fish's head rather than below.
Well,
Right.
Even though they're fish, they still like to come up and get their bait. They don't want to be digging it off the bottom. They still like to prefer to come up and get it.
Well, I mean, everything they eat, shad, bluegill, panfish, all this stuff, it typically schools up off bottom. That's their natural way of feeding is this. I mean, on our lake, it's shad that they're eating mostly, and they're swimming up into these balls of shad.
Right.
So Miss Robin says, Dustin, what are your goals for 2023?
I've thought about this a lot. As you know, other than just growing our channel, I think our biggest goal is to meet more people. Right. So I've definitely, I've got to meet Stan because he lives close. I went, Sean and I and Ryan went to the Potomac gathering this last year. We met Haz, we met Ernie, we met. Sorry about the background noise.
No.
So we met a bunch of the Potomac anglers up there. We met Fishing for Whiskers, Rhonda. We met her and her son up there. That's where we met Freddie and Nina. So we met a bunch of people up there. We've had the pleasure of traveling down to meet Tom and Michelle at the dock, and so that's one of my goals is for us to get out and meet more anglers and fish with more anglers on different bodies of water.
Right. Yeah, and it's always fun to get to meet new people and hang out with them and fish with new people. And Tyler Oliver says, spook or peg float?
I love the spooks the way they look. But I was telling Stan this story I think last week. I had purchased a pack of the Triple City Angler spooks, and I was using those, but I had one of my rods that still had the 3-inch peg float on it. And I had that rod with my other two with the spooks on it. I was fishing them all the time. And every time I caught a fish was on the peg float. And I'm like, I never said anything about it because I felt bad, to be honest with you. I didn't want to say anything negative about the spooks. And that's not a negative thing. You can't control what the fish does. But I've had a lot of luck on peg floats, and I've seen stuff like Dieter's done something. Kevin Palmetto Cats just did, talking about how much they can hold. Now, the peg float actually holds more than most of your spooks out there as far as weight goes.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, other than the bigger ones, I know Freddie's getting ready to sell like the really long ones. I think has some of the bigger ones, and Demon Dragon has some of the bigger ones. Yes. But as far as your typical peg floats, the spook actually holds more.
Right.
The peg float does hold more weight, but I don't know if it's as big an issue as I think. The real flaw in people's testing with that is they're putting lead on because they want to know what the actual weight of the lead is, and your bait is naturally buoyant.
Right.
So it takes a lot less to hold up a 5-ounce piece of bait than it does even a 1-ounce piece of lead. We did a video the other day. I put an 11-inch skipjack completely whole on, took the weight off of my line and threw it overboard, and it floated it.
Wow. Yeah.
Now, if I weighed that skipjack, however much it weighed, 6 ounces or whatever it probably weighed, 7 ounces. If I put that much lead on there, it's dragging it straight to the bottom. but because your bait's naturally buoyant, that helps offset that some. Uh, we prefer the spooks. I think there are times where running a peg float could be maybe a little better in certain situations if the fish are really finicky and you're anchoring, and it sometimes that rattle when it's not making any noise, then they hit it and it makes a little noise. But overall, we prefer the spooks.
Yeah, because we done the same thing. Like you were talking with the peg float and the spooks. We done the demon dragons. We put half demon dragons out and half peg floats. And after we did that, every fish we caught except for one came on a demon dragon. And then just like Cody was saying the other day when we done that test, it was on one of the brute series demon dragons, but it held up that 11-inch skipjack.
Yeah.
And
Now, Meadows
we
saying something about the weights in the chat, why he did it the way he did. I think it's more to try to figure out how much weight holds it down to pins it down to the bottom.
Right. Yeah, I just seen that. And so technically it makes more lead to take your lead from float. So, yeah, I guess I kind of misconstrued what he was testing for. I thought he was testing for what it could hold up itself. Curtis asked if you could fish anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
That's an interesting question because we're still fairly new to the catfish world, and the way I look at how and where I fish and how I feel about being on a boat. So my preference is if I'm and I prefer to be on a boat when I fish. My preference is to be on a boat where I can still see land. That I have no desire. I have no desire to go anywhere offshore. I have no desire um, like I need to see land. I feel more comfortable seeing land. So I love that's why I love the James River because it's narrow but it's big in other areas. I think the question was where, right?
Yeah, anywhere. Where would you go if what and why?
Um, I think for me to answer that question would be not so much where, but who was there. If I could go, I would love to go fish with Jody and Daryl and all the folk Bobcat on the Tennessee River, right? I would love to go, come and fish with you guys on your bodies of water. It's not so much about where I fish, but who I fish with for me.
Yes.
Yeah. I hope I answered the question.
Oh, you did. And Big Wrench, that is true. Demon Dragons definitely cost more than peg floats, but if you want to save some money on them, go to demondragons.com, use promo code 3+120, and it'll make it 20% cheaper on you.
There you go.
So put that little promo in there.
Yeah, but to that point about the peg floats, and I know you were talking about the noise, and what Wrench is saying, I also buy the Versa rattles. So that's why I started with. I usually put 2 Versa rattles and a peg float above my hook, and so I know the Versa rattles aren't as loud as the peg float or as the spooks. I get it, but it depends on I honestly don't know. I would love to see somebody do a test with an audible meter underwater to see the difference of the sound of the demon dragon or the spook makes versus what a peg float makes.
Well, I tell you what, me and Cody may be able to do. I have a underwater drone. Maybe able to do that.
Have a meter. I mean, you could just try to listen to hear. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. Does that even record sound, or is it just video? We've played with it a few times, and I've never paid attention to if I could hear anything or not.
Right. But I do know that the demon dragons are loud, especially the brute series. They're really loud.
Yes.
Yeah, Kevin. Mama bought it for him. I don't know, last year sometime. We took it to the ocean and played with it. We did put it in Barron one day, but it was on a day that it was really stained water, so we couldn't see a lot with it that day. But it's got lights, and you just take your controller and drive it around and look on your phone and see what you're driving at. It's pretty cool.
Now, I want to say something. I'm seeing a lot of people in chat going back and forth on the peg floats versus the Versa rattles, or peg floats and Versa rattles versus spooks and demon dragons. I know I've heard it many times before, and it rings real true with me. It's not about like the bait is for the fish, everything else is for the angler, right?
Right.
So it's whatever makes you comfortable. If you're comfortable with demon dragons, use demon dragons. If you're comfortable with peg floats and Versa rattles, use those. I wholeheartedly believe that is true, because if you're not confident in your gear, then you're not gonna catch fish.
Right.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. You know, we're big fans of the Demon Dragons. We use them constantly. The company is very nice to us. They're great people to deal with. But we've used plenty of peg floats too and caught plenty of fish. Uh, there's no one way to catch fish.
Correct.
There's whatever you're confident in and is going to give you the confidence to set in that place long enough to get the bite, or to trust your gut and make the right decision, is what's going to help you. So, you know, just because we're fans of one thing or somebody else is a fan of another doesn't mean either one of them is the only way to catch fish. There's a million ways to skin a cat.
And I honestly am not. I honestly don't have a preference to either. One thing I will say is I love supporting the other folks in the community. So I love buying stuff from Triple City Anglers, because that's supporting Haz and Triple City Anglers Company. I love buying stuff from Brad Caudell Tidal Weights, because that's supporting the community. So, but I also have peg floats and Versa rattles. So I don't have a preference per se on what I put on my line. It's just whatever I grab or have available to me.
And Fracture Fix says, first with what you want, or fish with what you want, measure if you want to measure, weigh if you want to weigh. Too many people try to impose their thoughts on people. Amen, Dustin. That's right. And it's the goal of fishing is to have fun. I know some people say they fish for subsistence, but fishing's an expensive hobby. It costs most of us a lot more than we could. If we eat everything we caught, it wouldn't be cheaper than going to the grocery store most of the time. So we fish because we love it. So do what you love.
Absolutely.
It's a great sentiment, Fracture Fix. And I seen, let me find it again.
New family member.
Hey, Big Wrench, thank you for becoming a part of the 3+1 family. We do appreciate you, man. Very awesome of you.
Yes. And I did say a question a while ago, Cody, that I wanted to touch on. Someone said, how do you determine what weight you use when dragging? And for me, I want to use the lightest dragging weight I can for where I'm fishing. Right. So if a 2-ounce sinker will hold my line to the bottom, I'll use a 2-ounce sinker. If I'm in current or something, I have to use 3 or 4 ounces, then I'll go up to 3 or 4 ounces. But I always want to use the lightest sinker I can and hold my line to the bottom.
Right. And Brad had answered that gentleman in there, and he said it's that you choose based on current and your speed, right. Because the boat moving, even in no current, your boat moving simulates current. So faster you're moving, more pressure you have on it, pulling it up. And then also faster the current's moving does the same thing. So typically, if it takes more than 4 ounces to hold our baits down, we just go to anchor. We don't worry about dragging. And maybe we're missing out there. But that's just what we do. Not saying that, hey, if it takes 6 ounces and you got some good 6-ounce dragging weights, there's no reason you shouldn't. Just that's what we do.
Right. And that's some of the stuff that we're still learning. I mean, it was probably this last summer we were dragging in Sean's boat with planer boards, and we were asking chat because we were moving. There was no current. We were moving. She's asked that more than once now. We're moving, and the planer boards just they kept collapsing. They wouldn't stay out. And so we were asking chat, what are we doing wrong? Do we go with the current? Do we go against the current? And I've always, talked to people, when they're dragging weights, that but I never asked which way do you go. So we always went with the current. We assumed that's how you were supposed to do it. But again, because of the community's awesome, we were telling people, and I think it was Chad that had made mention about it. But so we turned the boat around and started dragging the other way, and the planer board started working great. But as far as the weights go, I see people all the time will cast their line out, and now as soon as the weight hits the water, they'll wait like 1 second, they'll lock it down, they'll put the pole down. I don't do that. I like to make sure my weight hits the bottom before I do anything with the line. So because if I put a 2 ounce weight on and the current's moving and it takes forever, that means that my weight's not heavy enough because my line just keeps going. Eventually it's going to hit bottom, but if it takes more than 4 or 5 seconds, depending on the depth, I'll pull it in. I'll put a heavier weight on.
Right.
And something you also see people do is if they're fishing. Now, if we're fishing deep, I don't care if it's a little closer to the boat, but if you're fishing shallow, 10 foot or less, do your best to get that bait as far away from that trolling motor as possible.
Yep.
In the wintertime. So we run 8 rods. We'll run 2 planer boards on each side, a rod on each side straight out the back staggered, and then 2 rods directly just suspended down pretty much on bottom right there off the corners. In the winter, if we're fishing deep water, those rods that are suspended directly under the boat, 30 plus foot of water, they get hit just as much as any of the other rods. If we're fishing shallow, they never get hit. They hardly, they will once in a while. Most of the time it's a dinky fish that does it. But what that tells me is they're scared of that boat in that shallow water. It's either the noise of the trolling motor or there's enough light penetration that they can see the shadow of the boat when you're fishing shallow. So if you're fishing shallow, try to get those lines back away from the boat. Miss Jody says, ask Dustin what happened on his birthday last year.
So, I'm not sure exactly what she's referring to, but excuse me. On my birthday, it was actually the 23rd, was a Thursday, and so I went out and fished her challenge. I think I broke my PB 2 or 3 times that night. I caught a 20-pounder at midnight. When it turned on to my birthday, I actually caught a 42-pounder, and it was my 42nd birthday. I think I caught a 46-pounder that night too. But the funny thing is, I keep going back and I watch that show because I like to watch YouTube to go to sleep to, and I'll pull up that episode because it's not me catching the fish that I'm laughing at or watching. It's other people's responses. I love when Danny Stone, I caught that 46. He goes, "Oh, I'm done. I'm going home." I find it humorous.
Right. Live streaming can be a lot of fun, and it's fun to go out and live stream by yourself. But when you live stream on a panel with some of your fellow friends and fellow catfishermen of this community, there's nothing like it. It's a blast. It's as close to being in the boat with them as you can.
Absolutely. That's one of the things I say when I'm hosting Jody's show. Well, one of the things I try to say, because a lot of people will say Cody's in the house or Larry's in the house. I try to say either on our boat or I'm on Jody's boat or I'm on Jody's live. I'm like, LG Bass is in the boat with us tonight. Big Wrench is in the boat with us tonight. Because to me, you're all here. You're all experiencing a lot of the same things that we're experiencing. So.
Yeah. And, at the end of last year, I was able to catch my PB on Greenwell's live stream. And it was so much fun because we had Roger was also on stream, Roger and Skip, and I'm sitting here reeling this fish, and I could tell it was going to be a big fish. And I hear them over here rambling about Beavis and Butthead or going on with something nonsensical. And then I hear Roger go, "Hey, 1 second. Hey, he's got a big fish on. That looks like a real fish." And then the rod double, he got excited too, just watching me. So that made me feel even better about my own catch. And it's hard to explain, but when you've got that group of people cheering you on, it makes it all that much more better.
And I agree with you. So my PB I caught, not that I'm keeping track, December 17th, about 8:59 a.m. on a Sunday on stand day. The 55-pounder I caught I had stand 2 and stand 3 on the boat with me. We're on my boat. And They took me to one of their spots that I'd never been to before. It was on one of my rods. Once that thing took I grabbed the rod and I was reeling it in. I had stand 3 with the net on the backside of my boat. It was the water temp was probably in the mid 40s, but he was, risking getting, falling in the water. He was on the backside of my boat holding on. His dad was holding on to his shirt, and his dad had the camera going. One of them grabbed my GoPro and was filming all different angles. So they were all of that for me reeling in a big fish. And so I know exactly what you're talking about. It's so, when you have somebody there cheering you on and supporting you through that process, there's not a lot like it when it comes to fishing.
Yes. Cody, you're silenced there, Cody.
Sorry, I keep muting myself because I got this awful cough. I'm so sorry. But I like what Two Stand says here, and we've never done it. And if we've lived, our home water had current, I'm sure it'd be something we'd look into. But I love the idea. He says my favorite way to use boards is anchored.
We do that,
and
as
I
well.
just think it's awesome because that current is going to carry that board out itself, and you can anchor and get a huge spread, and that's pretty cool to me.
We did that on a stand day. I fish a lot of stand days. We were actually out in some bigger water, not so much deeper because the depth really didn't change much, but it was a lot wider where we were, and we were right by a bridge where the barges come through. So we were anchored in my boat just off the channel, right on the edge of the channel. And we're like, you know what? Let's put out a planer board, see what it does. So we put out one of the planer boards, almost spooled one of my lines, but it was probably a good 100 yards away from the boat, and a tugboat or a barge came through. I think the barge was literally 10 feet away from my planer board. We're like, is it going to hit it? What's it going to happen if it does?
Well, there's only one way to find out.
That's right.
And Brad Caudell says, one thing about fishing is there's no wrong way to fish. Some ways work better for other people. And, we're big fans of dragging baits, trolling for catfish. But there's another gentleman that fishes our exact same home lake that catches just as many, if not more, fish than us and catches big fish all the time. And he only ever anchors. And he's tried doing some drifting and stuff, and it just doesn't work great for him because the places that he knows to find fish, it's not the best technique for. But for us, we catch more fish when we are dragging than anchoring. So it's not that one way's better. Each person, a certain technique will fit your strong suit, what you're good at.
Yeah, I will say to that, let's see, my 45, my 50, my 55. I think all of my bigger fish were caught anchored. I think Sean's PB was caught anchored, and I think his son Ryan, his PB was just, I think, 31 or 32. We caught at night on one of our lives. I think we were drifting that night. But I mean, don't get it wrong. We've caught, there's days where we've been drifting and we caught a bunch of fish. We had a couple of guys, Ed Evans and Jeff Beal, came down from Pennsylvania just to fish with us on the James River because Jeff had never caught a blue before. And that day we anchored in my boat when we switched over, but we were drifting in Sean's boat, and we caught more fish drifting than we did anchored. So it's all about where you're at, the time of day, whether the fish are biting, whether they're not biting, how they're biting. There's a lot of things that go into it. So just try everything.
And Brian B says Dustin can run a James River podcast. Hint, hint. You're welcome, Dustin.
Thanks, Brian.
Bugman says Cody, sitting 15 minutes is not anchoring. Well, what is it then? I mean, I don't understand what else it'd be.
We like to go 30 minutes. So if we sit, especially during the spring to fall, if we're sitting in a spot longer than 30 minutes and we haven't caught anything, we're going to move. When we say we move, we may move 100 yards. We may move, a quarter mile down the river. We're just going to move. But during the wintertime, we may extend that time period.
It's funny because what Daryl says here is very true. And mostly true. I did hate dragging at first and was dead against it. What talked me into liking dragging, and now I don't like anchoring now that I've gotten used to dragging is not so much Daddy mastering it; it's him breaking out the master card. When he bought that iPilot trolling motor, it made the whole process so much easier. And it's funny to say, but having that north button and being able to just hit north and long as you're dragging into the wind, dragging in a decent direction, don't have a huge crosswind, you don't have anything to worry about, makes a huge difference.
Yeah,
and then Kevin says, spot lock has spoiled me so much. I hate throwing anchor, and sometimes I have to anchor. I won't fish that spot. I hate throwing an anchor too. Well, throwing the anchor ain't so bad. I hate pulling the anchor back up.
Yeah, so I've thought about a couple of different things, like an anchor retriever. Like Ed Evans has an anchor retriever, so it's a mechanical winch that he can drop his anchor and pull it back up without even touching the line. You're right. One of the things for me is because of where we fish, there can be a lot of boat traffic. Even if there's not a lot of boat traffic, if you're anchored and one of those cabin cuddy cruisers come by with his back end buried, you're more than likely going to lose anchor. I've had water almost go over the bow of my boat, and I sit probably 4 feet off, 2 to 3 feet off the water, because those things put off such huge waves. But I'm definitely, to that point, and I've already told this to on Facebook to title or to Never Lost. I'm getting me at least one Never Lost anchor, if not two, for my boat when I go to CatCon.
Yeah, they're great anchors, and there's comparable anchors out there, but really at the price point that he sells them, there's not a better option in my eyes. I think Cat River makes a great anchor. There's some other companies that make a great anchor, but they're just, the price isn't comparable, and the Never Lost holds just as good as most of those do.
Yeah, and when I get a trolling motor for my boat, that's going to be a game changer, because then we'll be able to go a little bit further downriver. The water is downriver to the James River out near the Chesapeake Bay are a lot wider. They're a lot deeper. And I would feel more comfortable in my boat as opposed to Sean's boat, because Sean's boat has lower sides. So I'd feel more comfortable in my boat going out there and in case you get caught in something. But I would rather have a trolling motor on that boat if I could.
We've definitely had that. Daddy's boat has a deep V now, but he had a bass tracker before that, and very little draft on the boat, and you're standing even with the top of the gunnel, and we had it out in some hairy situations. It definitely would get scary. This boat he has now is definitely a lot more comfortable.
Definitely, a lot more stable. And there you go, Cody. There's your way to make it rich in the fishing business. Come up with right there what Kevin asked for.
The only reason I have to anchor is if the current is too strong for spot lock. I wish someone would invent an anchor retriever that would pull my boat to the anchor in current and then pull the anchor. Well, they got anchor retrievers. I don't know if they're strong enough to pull your boat up current, though. Yes.
Yeah, we'll put a winch on there.
So, I mean, that's what your automatic anchor retrievers are, basically. They're just, small, low-voltage winches.
Right.
And Brad says, one thing about drifting and dragging is that you're finding actively feeding fish. You may not be on some nice fish and wasting time if they decide to bite, kind of like holding your breath for how long. And he said he has great things to say about Never Lost here. It's a great company. I can't say enough good things about Never Lost. I think they're amazing. And Fracture Fix says, Dustin, meet me at the Ghost Fleet or Hog Island.
All right. Tell me when.
And Kevin says, my anchor retriever is whoever comes fishing with me.
That's pretty much what Stan was saying a while ago. He said he didn't have a problem dropping the anchor and pulling it, because he means by him, he means either Dustin or Stan 3.
Well,
now, go ahead.
No, go ahead and say what you say. I was just going to shut it.
I was just going to say real quick, to the never lost anchor. So my anchor is one of those in my boat. It's the triangular one that that tilts down a little bit. I don't remember what it's called. But we were on the second James versus Tennessee River battle, and one of the lines got stuck or got snagged up in some brush. So I took my boat around the front of the log while the current pushed me up over the log. So I've got what's called an M hull, so it goes down, comes up, and then it V's. So the current pushed me up over, and it went over the edge, and I sat on the log. And if I lowered my motor, it kept hitting the log. So the only way I was able to get off that log was, luckily, we had the Stan's never lost anchor with us. I threw it as hard as I could, and it dug in, and I pulled my boat off that log.
Well, if everybody could, please hit that thumbs up before we shut this down. It's 7:00. We always pray at the end of all our live streams. Daddy's going to pray us out real quick, and then we'll run on over and we'll watch the bait shop together.
All right. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for this night, Lord. Thank you for each and every person in the chats tonight, Lord. We just ask your blessings and your guidance upon each and every one of us, Lord. And just thank you. Thank you for all of your many blessings. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Hey, tonight, whenever y'all go in to watch Dustin, if somebody could drop the link for Dustin so everybody could go run over and hit the remind button real quick before watching the bait shop. When y'all go in to watch him tonight, be sure to let him know how great he did on tonight's show. Let him know y'all seen him here. So we appreciate you. Thanks for being here. As we always say, it's God, family, and the great outdoors. God bless, and see y'all later.
See you guys.
Have a wonderful evening.